My entitled Karen aunt tried to legally scam and steal my mom's house while she was giving birth to my brother, thinking we wouldn't notice. Little did she know, my uncle had a plan, and it didn't end well for her. Spoiler alert, she goes to prison. Here's what happened. So some backstory, my dad has an older sister we'll call entitled aunt, and always, even as a child, my grandparents treated her like an angel and treated my dad like a piece of crap. For example, when my dad was in college, he wore clothes that had holes that were about 3 inches wide, and the tradition in China is that you get a lot of new clothes in the new year. His mom told him that they were going to get him a brand new coat for the winter, and my dad was really excited. A few days before New Year's, though, his parents said that they can't get him a coat. The coat they were going to give him costs 1,000 yuan, about 143 US dollars. But can you guess where that money went? Entitled aunt's freaking boyfriend. How can your son like that? Here's something worse. The coat they gave the boyfriend was 2,000 yuan. You could have just split the dang money so they both have new coats. The second my dad was out of college, he started working his ass off. He was able to give his parents money every year, even when they treated him like shit. Later finding out that every year, all that money goes to entitled aunt. But that's a different story. You get the gist. My dad treats his parents really well, and all that effort equals nothing, or it goes straight to entitled aunt. Story. For some reason, they hated my dad, mom, me, and siblings. This happened a few years ago when my mom was giving birth to my brother. I didn't realize how bad this story was until a few years ago because I did not understand. So, I was born in Beijing. My mom was somehow able to foresee that prices in houses were going to go up in there, so she and my dad worked hard to buy as much houses as they can. However, there is a limit to how many houses you can buy in Beijing, but my mom was able to find a loophole. She bought the house with her own money but put the house under someone else's name. She bought a house and put the house under my dad's mom's name. My mom paid for all the renovation. Important later. Fast forward about 4 years. My mom was pregnant with my brother. There is a law in China that says no having more than one baby, so they came to the US to legally have a baby. This is when entitled aunt saw her chance. She took advantage of my parents' absence to manipulate my grandparents, telling them to put the house my mom bought 4 years ago under entitled aunt's husband. Obviously, my grandparents caved in really easily and transferred it. Luckily, my mom's brother, I don't know how, was able to find out that they transferred it. Now, we were still in the US, so we weren't able to deal with this immediately. My parents called their lawyers to have a court summon for entitled aunt. She took her time and waited for the last warning to finally come into court. She brought my grandparents along too. According to my uncle, she was smirking the entire time waiting for the trial to begin, thinking that our side of the court can't really prove it, while low-key insulting our side of the family. I don't know how to translate this, but she said things like, my brother had always naughty, probably also passed it down to his children too. Or, my brother was such a coward he didn't even want to come, 'cause he knew I'd win. Then came the sweet revenge. The court first asked entitled aunt to talk. She said that the house was bought by grandmother and was then given to her husband, obviously with no proof. Then my uncle with the lawyers took out a record, clearly stating that my mother purchased this house with her own money. I wish I could have seen entitled aunt's face, but my uncle described it as a dark green, and maybe a little purple too. The judge then asked entitled aunt if this was true. The judge stated that if she was to lie, she would end up with much worse than just giving the house back. Surprisingly, she still stood her ground and claimed that the house was indeed her husband's, who got the house from grandmother and paid for renovations. That's where she messed up. My uncle and the lawyers triumphantly took out another paper saying that my mother paid for all the renovations, clearly not my aunt's husband. That's when she broke down like a bitch. She started crying, screaming in undecipherable language. She was soon taken to jail for 1 to 2 years? I forgot, but holy crap, she deserved it. This is the kind of story that makes me lose faith in humanity. How can someone be so entitled and manipulative, especially to their own family members? It's heartbreaking to hear how OP's dad was treated so poorly, even though he worked so hard to support his family, and even gave money to his parents every year. And then to hear how Karen tried to steal a house that OP's mom bought with her own money, and then lied about it in court. I mean, come on. But the best part of the story was definitely when Karen got her comeuppance. The way the judge and OP's uncle exposed all of her lies and proved that the house rightfully belonged to OP's family. It's just so satisfying. And the fact that Karen ended up in jail for her crimes, well, let's just say that karma is a you-know-what. What do you think, guys? Have you ever had a similar experience with a crazy family member? Let me know in the comments. A Karen believed that I should watch her kids for free while I was pregnant and running an in-home daycare. Even after I closed the daycare due to my high-risk pregnancy, Karen kept insisting on free childcare, which resulted in her not paying and her check bouncing. so I get revenge. Here's what happened. This happened years ago when my husband and I lived on a military base, and I ran an in-home daycare that was regulated through CYS, the Child and Youth Services. We had one child of our own, and it was a remote base, so jobs were scarce, so I figured this was a good option for me to work and be able to also stay home with our kiddo. The daycare spots were a shortage, and that meant I was full, and even had a wait list. This also meant I could kind of pick and choose the kids I had in my care. For the most part, I had great kids and decent parents. I even became friends with one of the sets of parents, and that was my mistake. This mom, let's call her Karen, seemed to be normal, not entitled, when we first met. We even had her family over for barbecues on a couple weekends and things were good. During the time of having the daycare open, I became pregnant with our second child. I have issues with headaches, and when I am pregnant, they get so much worse. Karen began asking me to babysit after hours for free, as friends for her. I agreed once in exchange for her watching our son once in return, and she agreed. I watched Karen's kids and she never followed through and watched ours. After that, Karen frequently asked me to allow her kids to stay late and not get charged. And also she would ask me to babysit after hours for free, and each time I would say no and I used my headaches as a reason. Karen actually said you can't use being pregnant as an excuse forever. I said no, not forever but for about 9 months. And it was about this time I knew I would not be able to keep running my daycare after a couple months because of the high-risk nature of my pregnancy. I started by informing the CYS and then put a letter together for the parents, and I gave them 2 months' notice to find care. This was an additional 30 days over and above what is required in the contract. I wanted to be fair, and I knew it might be hard to find care. I was also releasing them from their contracts as soon as they could find care. They did not need to give me notice. I handed out the letters at pickup that day. Karen waited till the other parents left and tore up her letter with a smile. Karen asked, "Will you throw this away for me?" I reply, "Sure, but you did get the gist, right? Yeah, you are closing your daycare because you're pregnant and don't want to deal with all of those other people." So I replied, "No, I am closing because I have a high-risk pregnancy and my doctor says I shouldn't be chasing after all the kids and I will have lots of appointments." Karen, "Yeah, but you can still watch my kids for me. And since you won't be a full daycare, you can do it for a lot cheaper." So I reply, "No, Karen, I am closing my daycare." "Okay, then at least you can watch my kids for free while I find daycare and be my backup care." "No, I am sorry, Karen, I am not doing that." Karen screams, "This is ridiculous. Women get pregnant all the time and you already have to watch your son. You can totally watch my 2 kids too, or are you telling me you can't watch your son either?" "Karen, I'm not going into this. I think it's time for you to find a new provider." "Fine, but I don't think I should have to pay you while I look." "No, Karen, you have to pay or I will stop watching your kids." Karen left with her kids. She kept bringing her kids, and when it came time for her payment, all of a sudden, her husband came to get the kids and drop them off and said Karen will be bringing the payment. This went on for 2 days, and then I told him that if I wasn't paid, I would not accept the kids into care and they would still owe me for the past due. Karen showed up on the 3rd day and wrote a check. This was normal, but it bounced, and that was not. I then contacted CYS and let them know per the contract. I gave them an invoice with the $25 NSF fee and a 48-hour notice to pay in full in cash. Karen's husband showed up and paid, but he said Karen was going to be upset because she did not want to pay. I guess she felt I should be watching their kids for free since I was closing my daycare. I talked to her husband and said I feel it's best he find new care as soon as possible, and that until he does, I would need to be paid in advance for the care. I had the kids for 2 weeks more. A way funny later event that happened. After I gave birth to our daughter, this had to be about a year and a couple months after closing the daycare, Karen called me. She wanted me to babysit her kids overnight so they could go to Las Vegas to a military ball. Oh, did I mention she wanted me to do this for free? I said no. Wow. I mean, I'm still shaking my head in disbelief at the level of entitlement Karen displayed in this story. So, the OP was running an in-home daycare while pregnant, and Karen, one of the parents, kept asking her for free childcare even after the OP had to close the daycare due to her high-risk pregnancy. And get this, Karen's check even bounced. Can you imagine? I just can't wrap my head around how some people think it's okay to take advantage of someone's kindness and generosity, especially when it comes to childcare. I mean, this is someone's livelihood, and Karen had the audacity to ask for free childcare, even after the OP had to close her business due to her own health concerns. And then, to top it off, Karen's check bounces? It's just too much. I'm so glad the OP stood her ground and got the payment she was owed. And it's just hilarious that after all of that, Karen had the nerve to call the OP to babysit her kids for free again. I mean, talk about delusional. Karen almost got me arrested for saving her child's life. Here's what happened. I never thought I'd be posting here, but this just recently happened. I'm almost graduating high school, and I have a job at the supermarket, bagging items, stocking merchandise, etc. But I'm still shaken up and decided this place would be a good place to put my experience. This day, it was pretty rainy, so there were barely any people in the store, and I was fixing any products that were out of order. I was just chilling since there was barely anything to do. Cue entitled parent and entitled kid come strolling into the store, and I don't pay mind to the woman because she has that "can I speak to the manager" haircut. I'm already kind of wearily of this woman, so I try to mind my own business and do my job. She sees me and rolls her eyes, muttering something about lazy teenagers even though I have a job. But whatever, and she asks me rudely without a please or anything where the drinks are. I tell her which aisle, and she loudly exclaims, "Excuse me, are you gonna take me there or what? Take me there now, or I'll speak to the manager. This is why you get paid." I only nod and don't say anything. So I take her to where the drinks are, and she doesn't say thanks or anything, only scoffs and pushes me away. So I'm fixing some stuff that fell onto the floor, not too far away, and I see entitled kid climbing onto the ledge where the drinks are. "Excuse me, we just mopped the floor so it's slippery, and plus your son can't be climbing that. It can fall, or he can get hurt." I say this as politely as possible, and I don't want to get in trouble 'cause of some kid, you know? Applying to colleges and a record won't do me any good. She gives me a nasty glare and snaps, "Don't tell me how to raise my child, mind your own fucking business." Her kid is still climbing the ledge part where the alcohol is, and I'm getting more anxious just looking at this kid. So while the mom is busy, I go to him and ask, "Hey, can you please get off? You can get hurt." He starts screaming for his mother, and she comes running like a mad bull. She asks him if he's okay, and if I hurt him, and he tells her, "She's not letting me play." She starts yelling at me and insulting me, calling me stupid and whatnot. She threatens me that she knows the manager and she will get me fired. She tells me to fuck off and continues to shop for wine while her kid is climbing on that ledge, and I get this bad feeling when I see him jump down hard and everything starts to shake. I run and tackle this kid to the ground to push him out of the way, then right at that moment, the whole drinks fall onto the ground. There is red everywhere since it was part of the wine aisle, and I see myself badly cut. The kid is crying, probably because I pushed him, and the mom comes running and she starts shrieking like a banshee. "This stupid teenager tried to kill my son!" And I told her that I literally saved her son's life since he could have been crushed or hurt badly by the glass. My thigh is bleeding since it got cut, and she grabs my arm, digging her nails into my arm. "You are not going anywhere. I'm pressing charges and calling the police, you murderer." I think I want to cry because I'm losing blood and she has a strong grip of my arm. The police arrive and I'm literally about to be escorted as the entitled parent watches me smugly when the manager comes running. I explain everything to him since he's known me since elementary and I'm not an evil child killer. He tells me he has everything on camera and I almost cry in relief. The entitled parent seems to go a little pale, but is still insistent on pressing charges at me and the store, demanding that I be arrested for assault of her kid. The police review everything, and even an eyewitness who saw and heard everything pitches in. The manager and police said I did a right thing and say I can press charges because entitled parent hurt my arm pretty badly. She's still fuming and now is threatening the police, so she's taken away and arrested. The kid is picked up by whom I presume is his dad, and I'm taken to the hospital to treat the glass shards in my leg. If I'm badly hurt from a few shards of glass, I can't imagine what would have happened if the kid was still there climbing. I don't think I could forgive myself if I had let him get hurt. OMG, this Karen is off her rocker. I can't believe she had the audacity to threaten OP with getting them fired for doing their job and then allowed her kid to climb up a ledge filled with glass bottles. And when OP tried to stop the kid, she flipped out on them. It's insane how entitled some people feel to ignore basic safety precautions and then lash out at those who try to help. But the real kicker is when OP saves the kid's life and Karen still tries to accuse them of murder. The nerve! It's a good thing the manager had OP's back and that there were eyewitnesses and security cameras to clear everything up. I'm just glad that OP and the kid are okay and that Karen is now getting what she deserves. You don't know my password? You're an idiot. This is a story on how a Karen came into our store demanding we print and scan her documents, but threw a fit when she couldn't remember her password. Despite our best efforts to help, she insulted and berated us, only to come back later for more help. Here's what happened. My parents own a small business. We are a pack and ship store that also sells stuff for some local artists. We also do some other services such as faxing, fingerprinting, printing, copying, shredding, and notaries. My siblings, some friends, and I work at the store. I was at work about 2 weeks ago, and we were very busy during lunchtime, which is pretty normal for us. My brother, mom, and I were all there, and both my brother and my mom were handling their own things, and I was disinfecting the counter. This plump, piggish lady with the classical Karen haircut walks in. She looked like Dolores Umbridge if Umbridge had a Karen haircut. I finished disinfecting, put the rag back into the bucket of disinfectant, then went to the register to help her. She was pleasant at first. She told me she needed to print and sign 2 large documents, then scan them in and email them to the company they were for and herself. Normal stuff for our business. So she emailed the documents to us. Sometimes Verizon phones struggle to connect to data within our store, and our network is secure because of safety and privacy for our customers. She had a Verizon phone and was instantly frustrated with how long it took for it to send. Around this time, her daughter came in, apparently in a rush. Her daughter barely spoke while she was here, but Karen had mentioned something along the lines of her needing to go to work soon. I'll call her CS for college student. She seemed much nicer than her mother, so I finally got the email documents. They were PDF files that required a password. So I disinfected the keyboard and gave it to Karen to log into the PDFs so we could print them. She typed her password in and hit enter. Wrong password. So she typed it in again. Wrong password. I lost count of how many times she tried to type in the same damn password and kept getting the wrong password. By now, all other customers in the store have come and gone. Another batch has come and gone. Finally, I sheepishly asked if there was a different one she could have used. That's when she started to get nasty. I know my password, it's the name of my daughter. I exchanged a look with my brother, then quietly said, okay, ma'am, try different combinations then. She tried the password a few more times while I just waited awkwardly. CS was wandering around the store looking at the things we have for sale. I was watching her as I waited. Then Karen cleared her throat, so I looked at her. Why are you just standing there like a fucking idiot? CS glared at her from across the store. I was a bit dumbfounded and frankly exhausted, so it took me a moment to actually register what she said. I just quietly apologized and stared at the counter. She kept grumbling about how I'm so unhelpful and I should be helping her more. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I suggested again to try different combinations. She did that snarly sigh thing that grouchy teenagers such as myself do. She typed in something else. And suddenly, we had access to the documents. She grumbled something along the lines of, "Foking finally," then called her daughter over. I tried to print it, and it came up with an error code, so I called my mom over and she helped me riddle it out. But then it printed absolutely tiny, so my mom and I spent a few minutes fan-angling with settings. That's when I noticed that it was set to the receipt printer size. So I set it to letter size and printed it again. Perfection. Karen's face lit up and she said, "You're so smart. Thank you." Oh, the irony. The rest of the job was pretty routine. I told my brother what happened afterwards, and he gave me a hug. 3 minutes later, I hear my mom's voice raise. She said what? But that was the last we were expecting to hear from that lady, so there wasn't anything we could do. Work went back on like normal, but wait, there's more! We got a call about 40 minutes after CS and Karen left. My mom picked it up because my brother and I were handling customers. It was Karen's husband. He said they never got the email, and that Karen wanted to send it to his email as well now. So we sent the documents to them again and all was fine. Then the husband stopped before he hung up and asked, "Did my wife cause any trouble while she was there? She keeps saying the customer service there was awful, and I don't believe her." Not his exact words, but roughly what he said according to my mom. My mom told him what happened. He thanked her and hung up. I'd like to believe that Karen got chewed out. Who knows? What did I just read? This story is wild, my friends. The level of entitlement and anger from Karen is just off the charts. I mean, she comes into this pack and ship store and demands the employees print and scan her documents, but then loses it when she can't remember her password. And don't even get me started on how she treated the poor employee trying to help her. I felt so sorry for them. But here's the thing that really blew my mind. After all that, Karen comes back later to ask for more help. Unbelievable. And then her husband calls. And you know, Karen's been telling him some BS about the terrible customer service she received. Thankfully, the employee's mom sets him straight. Honestly, I can't even imagine what it's like to deal with people like Karen on a regular basis. But I do know one thing. The employee in this story deserves a medal for their patience and professionalism. What do you all think about this situation? Have you ever dealt with a Karen like this before?